A billionaire finds black twins in a crashed car, but DNA results bring a stunning revelation. What surprising connection will be uncovered, changing everyone's lives? And if you cherish your family and love videos like this, subscribe to our channel to have 10 years of luck in your life. The evening air was heavy with tension as Nathaniel stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, overlooking the city lights below. His hands trembled slightly as he held his phone, listening to the police report about the accident. The officer's voice was matter-of-fact, describing how Nathaniel's car had collided with another vehicle at the intersection of 5th and Main. 2 teenage boys were critically injured, and their mother hadn't survived. Nathaniel's mind replayed the moments before impact. He had been distracted, reviewing quarterly reports on his phone while his driver navigated through the evening traffic. The sound of screeching tires and shattering glass still echoed in his thoughts. His driver had sustained minor injuries, but Nathaniel had walked away without a scratch, a fact that now filled him with crushing guilt. The marble floors of his mansion seemed to mock him with their perfection as he paced, waiting for updates from the hospital. His security team had already been dispatched to manage the situation, but Nathaniel knew this wasn't something that could be solved with money or influence. 2 young lives hung in the balance, and he was responsible. At the hospital, the sterile corridors felt endless as Nathaniel followed a nurse to the intensive care unit. The boys lay in separate rooms, connected to machines that beeped steadily, monitoring their vital signs. Through the glass walls, Nathaniel observed their faces, identical features marred by cuts and bruises. Elijah and Jamal, the nurse had called them. Standing between their rooms, Nathaniel experienced something he couldn't explain. Despite their unconscious state, he felt drawn to them in a way that transcended mere responsibility or guilt. Their presence stirred something deep within him, a connection he couldn't rationalize. He found himself studying their features, noting the curve of their jaws, the shape of their brows, searching for something he didn't understand. The attending physician, Dr. Sarah Chun, approached with a tablet in hand. Her expression was professional but grave as she detailed the extent of the twins' injuries. Concussions, broken ribs, internal bleeding that had been stabilized. They were lucky, she said, though Nathaniel struggled to see anything fortunate about the situation. Then came the news about their mother. Sarah Martinez, a local artist known for her vibrant murals and community work, had been pronounced dead at the scene. Dr. Chin showed Nathaniel a photo from her file, a woman with warm brown eyes and an infectious smile, surrounded by her artwork. The image burned itself into his memory. Returning to his mansion that night, Nathaniel wandered through the empty halls. The space that had once represented his success now felt hollow. 48 years old, billions in assets, and not a single person waiting for his return. His marriage had ended years ago. No children, his parents long deceased. The accident had forced him to confront the emptiness of his existence. In his study, Nathaniel opened his laptop and began researching Sarah Martinez. Article after article praised her contributions to the community, her dedication to making art accessible to underprivileged youth. Videos showed her working with students, her enthusiasm infectious, as she guided young hands holding paintbrushes. The twins appeared in some footage, younger versions of the boys now fighting for their lives. Sleep eluded him that night. Nathaniel sat in his leather armchair, watching the sun rise over the city. His mind cycled through possibilities, what he could do for the boys, how he could make amends. Money seemed inadequate, yet it was the tool he knew best. He could ensure they received the best medical care, provide for their future education, but something told him the situation required more than financial solutions. Morning brought his legal team, armed with liability assessments and settlement proposals. Nathaniel dismissed them with uncharacteristic irritation. This wasn't about protecting his assets or maintaining his public image. For the first time in years, he felt compelled by something beyond business interests, a pull toward these boys that defied explanation. The following days saw Nathaniel immersing himself in Sarah Martinez's world. He began his investigation at the local community center where she had taught art classes. The building stood in stark contrast to his corporate environment, walls covered in murals, paint-splattered tables, and the lingering scent of creativity in the air. The center's director, Maria Rodriguez, shared stories of Sarah's dedication to her students and her unwavering commitment to making art accessible to everyone. Sarah's journey proved more complex than Nathaniel had anticipated. Through conversations with community members, he learned how she had grown up in government housing, raising her twin boys alone while pursuing her passion for art. She had refused to let poverty define her or her children's future, working multiple jobs while attending art school at night. Her determination had eventually earned her recognition in the local art scene, though financial security remained elusive. Nathaniel found himself standing in the modest gallery where Sarah had held her first exhibition. The space, though small, held an energy that his corporate boardrooms lacked. Her paintings lined the walls, bold, vibrant pieces that seemed to pulse with life. The gallery owner, an elderly man named Thomas, spoke of Sarah with profound respect, describing how she would bring her young sons to the gallery after school, setting them up with homework in a corner while she worked on her installations. One particular painting stopped Nathaniel in his tracks. It depicted two young boys, clearly Elijah and Jamal, standing against a backdrop of their mother's favorite mural. The boys' expressions captured a mix of pride and determination that reminded Nathaniel of his own childhood ambitions, before wealth and status had reshaped his priorities. Something about their eyes in the painting struck him as familiar, though he couldn't place why. Through his investigation, Nathaniel discovered that Sarah had maintained detailed journals of her life and work. Her friend Marcus, a local cafe owner, shared insights from their many conversations over coffee. Sarah had confided in him about her struggles, her hopes for her sons, and a mysterious past she rarely discussed. Marcus described how she would sometimes appear lost in thought, as if carrying a weight she couldn't share. "She was different from most artists I've known," Marcus explained, wiping down his cafe counter. Sarah painted not just to create beauty, but to tell stories of struggle, resilience, and hope. Her boys were her everything, but sometimes I caught her looking at them with this expression, like she was seeing someone else in their faces. The revelation about Sarah's financial struggles affected Nathaniel deeply. His own wealth felt almost obscene in comparison to her modest life. Yet she had managed to provide her sons with opportunities through sheer determination and community support. The twins had excelled in school, Jamal showing exceptional aptitude for mathematics and sciences, while Elijah inherited his mother's artistic sensibilities. Nathaniel spent hours reviewing newspaper articles about Sarah's community projects. She had initiated a program that brought art education to underfunded schools, often using her own limited resources to provide supplies. Her students spoke of her ability to see potential in everyone, to nurture creativity and even the most unlikely places. It was a stark contrast to Nathaniel's world, where value was measured in profit margins and market share. A visit to Sarah's small apartment, preserved as she had left it, revealed more about her character. Art supplies were organized carefully alongside college brochures for her sons. Bills and budget calculations showed her meticulous planning to afford opportunities for Elijah and Jamal. On her desk sat a sealed envelope addressed to her sons, marked for when you're ready. The more Nathaniel learned about Sarah Martinez, the more questions arose. Her background seemed to have gaps that no one could explain. Even her closest friends admitted there were parts of her life she kept private, especially regarding her early years and the twins' father. These mysteries only deepened Nathaniel's sense that there was more to discover about the connection he felt to this family. The hospital room fell silent as Elijah's eyes fluttered open, adjusting to the harsh fluorescent lighting. His consciousness returned gradually, accompanied by waves of physical pain and emotional disorientation. The medical equipment's steady beeping provided an unwelcome reminder of his surroundings. His first coherent thought manifested as a whispered question, "Where's Mom?" The attending nurse's hesitation spoke volumes before she could form a response. In the adjacent room, Jamal remained unconscious, his vital signs stable but showing no signs of immediate awakening. The twins, always inseparable, now faced their first moments of crisis apart. Elijah's repeated questions about his mother met with gentle deflections from the medical staff, who had been instructed to wait for a psychologist's presence before delivering the devastating news. Confusion clouded Elijah's features as he attempted to piece together the fragments of his memory from the accident. The last clear image in his mind was his mother's smile as she drove them home from their evening art class, Jamal engrossed in a physics textbook in the backseat. The sound of screeching tires, the crash of metal against metal, and then darkness. These memories surfaced in painful bursts. Nathaniel arrived at the hospital during this critical period of awakening. He stood in the doorway of Elijah's room, his expensive suit contrasting sharply with the institutional setting. The introduction he had rehearsed felt inadequate in the face of Elijah's raw grief and confusion. "I'm Nathaniel Wheeler," he began, his usual confidence wavering. "I was involved in the accident, and I want to help." Elijah's response was a mixture of anger and suspicion. His eyes, so like his mother's, fixed on Nathaniel with an intensity that seemed to pierce through any pretense. "Where's my mother?" he demanded again, his voice stronger this time. The truth could no longer be withheld, and the hospital psychologist stepped forward to deliver the news that would forever alter the trajectory of both twins' lives. The revelation of Sarah's death unleashed a torrent of emotion. Elijah's initial shock gave way to deep, racking sobs that seemed to echo through the sterile hospital corridors. In his room, though still unconscious, Jamal's monitoring equipment registered subtle changes in his vital signs, as if responding to his twins' distress. Nathaniel found himself rooted to the spot, witnessing a grief that no amount of wealth or influence could alleviate. His presence, a reminder of the accident's cause, clearly aggravated Elijah's distress. Yet something prevented him from leaving, perhaps the same inexplicable connection he'd felt since first seeing the twins. As the days progressed, Jamal finally regained consciousness, his awakening marked by the same devastating realization that had confronted his brother. The twins, now able to see each other, found some comfort in their shared presence, though their usual synchronized behavior showed signs of strain. Jamal retreated into silence, WHI. Elijah's grief manifested in bursts of anger and questioning. During one of his visits, Nathaniel overheard Elijah softly singing to himself, a melody that seemed both mournful and hopeful. The nursing staff explained that music had always been his outlet, a gift inherited from his mother. Sarah had encouraged his talent, scraping together money for second-hand instruments and lessons. Now, in the sterile hospital environment, his music took on new meaning, a way to process the unprocessable. Elijah revealed to a sympathetic nurse that he had been working on a collection of songs inspired by his mother's life. The project, started in secret as a birthday surprise, now transformed into something else entirely, a memorial, a way to keep her memory alive. His lyrics spoke of her struggles, her triumphs, and the love she had poured into raising her sons. Nathaniel's attempts to connect with the twins met with varying degrees of resistance. Jamal maintained a wall of silence, while Elijah's responses alternated between hostile accusations and vulnerable questions about the accident's details. Their distrust was palpable, yet Nathaniel persisted in his visits, driven by a compulsion he couldn't explain even to himself. The hospital staff noted the unusual dynamic developing between the billionaire and the grieving teenagers. Nathaniel's frequent presence, far beyond what might be expected from someone involved in an accident, sparked speculation. The twins' reactions to him, though outwardly negative, carried undertones of something more complex, as if they, too, sensed an underlying connection they couldn't understand. Nathaniel's decision to finance Jamal's education emerged from careful observation of the young man's potential. During his hospital recovery, Jamal's textbooks remained constant companions, his focus on advanced mathematics and physics providing an escape from grief. The nurses often found him solving complex equations in the margins of his notebooks, his mind seeking refuge in the certainty of numbers, while his emotional world remained in chaos. Through discreet inquiries, Nathaniel learned of Jamal's academic achievements. Despite attending an underfunded public school, he had maintained perfect grades in advanced placement courses while helping his mother with her community art programs. His teachers spoke of his exceptional aptitude for engineering concepts, describing projects where he had designed innovative solutions to local infrastructure problems. The offer came during one of Nathaniel's regular visits, presented not as charity, but as an investment in potential. "Your academic record is impressive," Nathaniel stated, placing a comprehensive educational proposal on Jamal's bedside table. "I've arranged for full scholarship opportunities at several top engineering programs. The choice of institution would be entirely yours." The stack of papers included acceptance letters from prestigious universities, already secured through Nathaniel's connections. Jamal's initial response was skepticism bordering on hostility. "Why would you do this?" he questioned, his voice carrying months of suppressed anger. "Is this how you plan to clear your conscience?" The papers remained untouched, though Nathaniel noticed Jamal's eyes repeatedly drawn to the university letterheads. Meanwhile, Elijah's adjustment followed a different path. His focus turned to his mother's unfinished community projects, using his musical talents to maintain the art programs she had started. The contrast between the twins' coping mechanisms became increasingly apparent, Jamal immersing himself in academic pursuits while Elijah sought connection through artistic expression. The transition from hospital to regular life brought new challenges. Nathaniel arranged for the twins to maintain residence in their mother's apartment, ensuring their independence while providing discreet financial support through a trust fund. The familiar surroundings helped ease their adjustment, though Sarah's absence echoed through every room. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, the twins' resistance to Nathaniel's involvement began to soften. Jamal started asking questions about the engineering programs, his natural curiosity eventually overcoming his reservations. Elijah, though still maintaining emotional distance, stopped actively avoiding Nathaniel's presence at community events. The breakthrough came unexpectedly during a college preparation meeting. Jamal, reviewing the university proposals, discovered that Nathaniel had included provisions for Elijah's musical education alongside the engineering programs. This consideration for both twins' distinct paths suggested an understanding that went beyond mere obligation or guilt. However, beneath the surface of this progressive acceptance, unresolved tensions simmered. The twins carried deep-seated questions about their past, their mother's struggles, and the circumstances that had brought Nathaniel into their lives. Their acceptance of his help came with an undercurrent of suspicion about his true motives. Unknown to the twins, Nathaniel's former assistant, James Morton, had begun compiling a dossier on their family history. Bitter from his recent dismissal, James saw the billionaire's unusual interest in the twins as potential leverage. His investigation would soon uncover information that would force all parties to confront uncomfortable truths about their connections. As the twins began to adapt to their new reality, the weight of unspoken questions grew heavier. Each interaction with Nathaniel seemed laden with subtext, each act of generosity raising new questions about its underlying motivation. The path forward remained uncertain, marked by small steps of progress and lingering shadows of doubt. The community project to honor Sarah Martinez's memory began taking shape in an abandoned warehouse space that she had once dreamed of converting into an art center. Nathaniel acquired the property through his foundation, though he intentionally maintained a low profile in the development process, understanding that the project's authenticity depended on community leadership rather than corporate oversight. Elijah took charge of the creative direction, channeling his grief into a vision that merged his mother's artistic legacy with practical community needs. His initial sketches showed a multipurpose space featuring galleries, classrooms, and a performance venue. Jamal, despite his focus on engineering studies, contributed by designing sustainable systems for the building's renovation, applying his technical knowledge to honor his mother's environmental values. During one of the planning sessions, the atmosphere in the room shifted noticeably when Jamal arrived late, clutching a worn leather journal he had discovered while sorting through their mother's belongings. The book's presence seemed to charge the air with unspoken tension. He placed it on the conference table without explanation, its weathered cover drawing everyone's attention. "I found this behind her dresser," Jamal announced, his voice carefully controlled. "It's not her usual art journal." The implications hung heavy in the air. Sarah Martinez had been known for keeping detailed records of her artistic process, but this journal appeared older, more personal. Its pages contained not sketches, but handwritten entries dating back to before the twins' birth. Nathaniel's reaction to the journal's appearance didn't go unnoticed. His usual composed demeanor faltered briefly, a subtle tension appearing around his eyes. Though he maintained his focus on the project discussions, his gaze repeatedly returned to the journal throughout the meeting, as if it held answers to questions he hadn't yet formed. The journal's contents remained undiscussed during the official meeting, but its presence catalyzed a shift in the dynamic between Nathaniel and the twins. Jamal had discovered entries that hinted at a complex past their mother had never shared, including references to a prominent family with whom she had apparently shared a significant connection. The timing of these entries, coinciding with the period just before the twins' birth, raised questions that neither brother could ignore. During a break in the planning session, Elijah found himself alone with Nathaniel in the warehouse's makeshift office. The conversation, initially focused on acoustic requirements for the performance space, gradually shifted toward more personal territory. Elijah mentioned his mother's habit of attending classical music concerts, despite their limited finances, often sitting in the furthest balcony seats. She would close her eyes during the performances, Elijah recalled, his voice soft with memory. Said the music reminded her of someone she used to know. The comment hung in the air between them, carrying weight beyond its simple observation. Nathaniel's response was a prolonged silence, his expression suggesting memories of his own. The project continued to progress, with community members contributing ideas and labor, but the undercurrent of unresolved questions grew stronger. Jamal began noticing similarities between Nathaniel's mannerisms and expressions he remembered from their mother's old photographs. Elijah found himself unconsciously playing melodies that seemed to resonate with their benefactor in unexpected ways. Nathaniel's involvement in the project, while professionally justified, carried an intensity that surpassed mere philanthropic interest. He spent hours reviewing plans, offering suggestions that showed surprising insight into Sarah's artistic philosophy. His understanding of her vision seemed to run deeper than what could be explained by recent research alone. The journal remained unopened during project meetings, but its presence served as a constant reminder of unspoken truths. Jamal carefully documented every reaction, every subtle response to its mention, building a mental catalog of connections he wasn't ready to voice. The mathematical precision of his mind sought patterns in the complicated web of relationships surrounding them. James Morton's discovery of Sarah's journal transformed his revenge plot into something far more complex than simple corporate retaliation. The former assistant, who had spent 15 years managing Nathaniel's personal affairs, recognized the significance of the information within those pages immediately. His decision to contact Leon Reynolds, a local journalist known for exposing corporate scandals, was calculated for maximum impact. The meeting between James and Leon took place in a quiet coffee shop far from the business district. James arrived with photocopies of key journal entries, along with a carefully curated timeline of events that connected Sarah Martinez's past with Nathaniel Wheeler's family history. Leon, initially skeptical of another disgruntled employee story, found his interest piqued by the unusual connections James presented. Sarah Martinez wasn't just a random accident victim, James explained, spreading photographs across the table. Look at these dates, these locations. She was in the same private school as Nathaniel's cousin during their teenage years. There are photographs of them together at social events. Then suddenly, she disappears from the society pages, only to resurface years later in the public housing system, pregnant with twins. Leon's journalistic instincts recognized the potential magnitude of the story. His preliminary fact-checking confirmed James's basic timeline, revealing a pattern of suspicious financial transactions from Wheeler family trusts to various anonymous accounts during the period of Sarah's disappearance. The journalist began drafting an article that would suggest a decades-old family scandal, carefully framing the evidence to imply connections without making direct accusations. Nathaniel received the first warning about the impending article through his legal team. The notification came in the form of a courtesy call from the newspaper's attorneys, offering him 24 hours to comment on the allegations before publication. The timing couldn't have been worse, as he had finally begun to establish a tentative trust with the twins through their work on the community center project. In his penthouse office, Nathaniel paced as his lawyers presented options for suppressing the story. Legal injunctions, financial settlements, counter-narratives. All the usual tools of corporate damage control seemed inadequate in the face of personal truths he had spent decades avoiding. The journal's existence threatened to expose not just his connection to Sarah, but deeper family secrets that had been buried for generations. The twins' reaction to news of the upcoming article emerged gradually. Elijah first noticed unusual activity around their apartment building, photographers trying to appear casual, unfamiliar cars parked for hours. Jamal, with his methodical mind, began connecting these observations to subtle changes in Nathaniel's behavior during project meetings. Their benefactor's typical confidence had given way to distraction, his phone constantly buzzing with messages he stepped away to answer. The situation reached a critical point when a draft of the article was leaked online. Though quickly removed, screenshots circulated through social media, reaching the twins through their community connections. The article's implications about their mother's past and their own origins forced them to question everything they thought they knew about their family history. During this period, Nathaniel's attempts to maintain normal interactions with the twins became increasingly strained. Every conversation felt weighted with unspoken questions. The community center project, once a symbol of healing and connection, now seemed tainted by possible hidden motives. The twins found themselves analyzing every interaction with Nathaniel, searching for signs of truth in both his past generosity and current anxiety. James Morton, watching the situation unfold from a distance, felt a mixture of satisfaction and unexpected guilt. His revenge plot had succeeded beyond expectations, but the human cost was becoming apparent. The twins, whom he had seen as mere pawns in his scheme against Nathaniel, were emerging as the true victims of this long-buried history. The fracture between Nathaniel and the twins manifested in the abrupt cancellation of their weekly project meetings. The community center's construction continued, but the personal connection that had begun to develop unraveled with each passing day. Elijah stopped responding to Nathaniel's messages, while Jamal's replies became increasingly formal and distant, reverting to the cold politeness of their early hospital interactions. In the absence of their newfound mentor, the twins pursued separate paths of coping with their growing uncertainty. Elijah found refuge in a local music collective, a group of young artists who performed in underground venues across the city. His music, once focused on celebrating his mother's life, evolved into complex compositions that explored themes of identity and betrayal. The raw emotion in his performances drew increasing attention from local music producers, offering him a potential career path independent of Nathaniel's influence. Jamal, meanwhile, channeled his confusion into academic intensity. His apartment bedroom transformed into a makeshift research center, walls covered with timelines and connected events spanning the past 20 years. His engineering studies continued, but his analytical mind couldn't resist applying the same systematic approach to understanding his family's history. Each new piece of information from the leaked article found its place in his growing web of connections. The emotional confrontation became inevitable when all three encountered each other at a community board meeting regarding the Arts Center's funding. The tension in the room was palpable as Nathaniel attempted to discuss construction progress, only to be interrupted by Elijah's direct challenge about the article's allegations. "Were you ever going to tell us?" Elijah demanded, his voice carrying across the now silent meeting room. "Or were you just going to keep playing benefactor while hiding the truth about who you really are to us?" The question hung in the air, loaded with weeks of accumulated hurt and confusion. Jamal, typically the more reserved brother, added his own carefully constructed observations. "We've analyzed every interaction, every coincidence," he stated, pulling out his research notes. "The timing of your interest in us can't be merely guilt over the accident. You knew something about our mother, didn't you? Something that made you feel responsible for us beyond the crash." Nathaniel's composed exterior cracked under the weight of their direct confrontation. His attempt to maintain professional distance crumbled as years of carefully guarded emotions rose to the surface. The meeting room quickly emptied of other attendees, leaving the three of them to face their shared reality. The confrontation revealed the depth of pain on all sides. The twins expressed their sense of betrayal, not just at the possibility of hidden connections, but at the realization that their mother might have kept significant secrets about their origins. Nathaniel struggled to explain his own journey of discovery, his gradual recognition of connections he hadn't initially understood himself. In the aftermath of this emotional explosion, the distance between them grew even wider. Elijah immersed himself completely in his music, performing songs that barely disguised their autobiographical nature. His lyrics spoke of hidden truths and shattered trust, drawing increasingly larger audiences who connected with his raw, emotional honesty. Jamal retreated further into his academic work, but his research now expanded to include deep dives into Nathaniel's family history. His engineering professors noticed his distraction but couldn't deny the brilliance of his project work, even as they worried about his increasing isolation. The situation reached a breaking point when both twins independently discovered additional documents that seemed to contradict parts of their mother's journal. The complexity of their family history appeared to run deeper than even the impending news article suggested, raising questions about who, if anyone, knew the complete truth. The turning point in their strained relationship began during an unexpected encounter at Sarah's favorite art gallery. Nathaniel had gone there seeking solitude, only to find both twins examining their mother's final exhibition. The shared space forced a conversation that had been brewing for months. Instead of his usual polished corporate demeanor, Nathaniel revealed a vulnerability none of them had anticipated. "I never knew my own mother," Nathaniel began, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "She died when I was young, and my father buried himself in business dealings rather than face his grief. I built my empire thinking wealth could fill the void of family, but walking into that hospital room and seeing you both, something shifted inside me that I couldn't explain." This admission of personal loss created a momentary bridge. The twins, who had spent weeks constructing barriers against Nathaniel's influence, found themselves recognizing familiar pain in his words. Jamal, with his analytical mind, began to see patterns in their shared experiences of loss and isolation. Elijah, more attuned to emotional undercurrents, detected genuine anguish beneath Nathaniel's carefully maintained facade. Nathaniel continued sharing aspects of his life that he'd never revealed publicly. He spoke about the pressure of maintaining his public image, the loneliness of boardrooms and charrette, why galas, and the emptiness of his achievements without family to share them. His divorce, he explained, had come from his inability to connect emotionally, always keeping people at arm's length. The accident wasn't just a tragedy, he explained, his voice growing stronger. It was a wake-up call. Seeing your mother's artwork, learning about her dedication to community, watching how you both supported each other through grief, it showed me everything missing in my own life. But then I began noticing things, similarities that couldn't be coincidental. The twins listened with growing interest as Nathaniel described his own research into their family connections. His wealth and influence had granted him access to records that even Jamal's thorough investigation hadn't uncovered. Yet rather than presenting conclusions, he shared his confusion and uncertainty about what he'd found. Elijah, who had been channeling his emotions into music, recognized the authentic struggle in Nathaniel's words. "Our songs lately," he admitted, "they've been about more than just losing Mom. They're about questioning everything we thought we knew about ourselves." Jamal produced his research notes, spreading them across a gallery table. Instead of accusation, his presentation now carried a tone of collaborative inquiry. "There are patterns here that don't make sense unless..." He paused, looking directly at Nathaniel, "unless our families were connected long before the accident." The gallery conversation extended into the evening, with all three sharing their perspectives on the mysterious connections they discovered. Though trust wasn't fully restored, the walls between them began showing cracks. The twins' resistance to Nathaniel's presence softened as they recognized his own journey of discovery paralleled their own. As they prepared to leave the gallery, Nathaniel made one final confession. "I've been afraid," he admitted, "not of the truth coming out, but of losing whatever connection we've built. Money and influence have always been my tools for controlling situations, but this feels different. This feels like family." The morning of the article's publication arrived with an unusual stillness. Nathaniel received his copy of the newspaper in his penthouse, while the twins sat together in their mother's apartment, each group waiting to see how their lives would change once the truth became public. The article, titled "The Hidden Connection: A Family Legacy Revealed," occupied the entire front page of the local newspaper's weekend edition. The journalist, Leon Reynolds, had constructed a narrative that began with Sarah Martinez's early life, revealing previously unknown details about her privileged upbringing. According to school records and social registers, Sarah had attended the prestigious Westbrook Academy alongside Caroline Wheeler, Nathaniel's cousin. The article included a photograph from their graduation, showing Sarah and Caroline arm in arm, their young faces radiating happiness and promise. The story then traced Sarah's sudden disappearance from high society, coinciding with a series of substantial payments from Wheeler family trusts to offshore accounts. Bank records showed regular deposits continuing for years, all carefully concealed through multiple shell companies. Reynolds had meticulously connected these transactions to Sarah's movements, including her emergence in a different part of the city, pregnant with twins. Most significantly, the article revealed that Sarah Martinez was not merely a friend of the Wheeler family. She was Caroline Wheeler's half-sister, the result of a brief relationship between Sarah's mother and the family patriarch, making her Nathaniel's first cousin. The discovery explained the strange sense of connection Nathaniel had felt upon seeing the twins, who were, in fact, his second cousins. The report detailed how the Wheeler family had attempted to manage the scandal by arranging Sarah's departure, providing financial support in exchange for her silence. Sarah had chosen to build a new life away from the family's influence, channeling her experiences into art that often subtly referenced themes of hidden identity and family secrets. As the twins read the article, pieces of their mother's behavior began making sense. Her insistence on their education despite financial struggles, her careful documentation in journals, her occasional melancholic moments when viewing certain wealthy neighborhoods from afar. The article included excerpts from Sarah's journal that revealed her internal struggle between protecting her children from family drama and preserving their rightful heritage. The publication sparked immediate reaction across the city. The Wheeler family's public relations team scrambled to manage the fallout, while social media exploded with discussions about class privilege and family responsibility. However, in two particular locations, a penthouse apartment and a modest family home, the focus remained intensely personal. Nathaniel's reaction to seeing the full story in print was complex. While the article confirmed connections he had begun to suspect, the detailed account of his family's role in Sarah's exile filled him with a profound sense of responsibility. The Wheeler family's attempts to buy silence and maintain their reputation had inadvertently shaped the lives of three innocent people, Sarah and her sons. For the twins, the revelation of their mother's true identity and their connection to the Wheeler family emerged as both an answer and a new source of questions. Their mother's decision to forge an independent life, refusing to be defined by family scandal, took on new significance. Her dedication to community service and art education appeared not just as career choices, but as deliberate rejection of the privileged world she had left behind. The revelation in the newspaper created profound ripples that transformed the relationship between Nathaniel and the twins. In the immediate aftermath of publication, all three found themselves navigating a new reality that demanded acknowledgement of their shared heritage while honoring Sarah's independent legacy. The morning following the article's release, Nathaniel made a deliberate choice that marked a departure from typical Wheeler family crisis management. Instead of releasing a carefully crafted statement through his PR team, he drove himself to the twins' apartment in a modest sedan, carrying Sarah's journal and a box of old photographs he had discovered in his family's archives. This gesture of humility and connection represented his first step toward authentic family bonds rather than orchestrated public relations. Inside the apartment, the atmosphere crackled with emotional tension as the three men gathered around the kitchen table, where Sarah had once helped her sons with homework. Nathaniel began sharing stories about Caroline, their aunt, and the close friendship she had shared with Sarah before family politics tore them apart. He revealed how Caroline had secretly maintained contact with Sarah over the years, sending birthday cards and news through intermediaries. Your mother's strength wasn't just in surviving hardship, Nathaniel explained, his voice thick with emotion. It was in creating beauty and meaning despite it. The Wheeler family tried to solve everything with money, but Sarah understood that real wealth lies in community, in creativity, in the connections we build with others. The twins processed this information differently. Elijah found himself drawn to the photographs, studying the young face of his mother in her privileged youth, noting how her smile remained unchanged even in her later years of struggle. Jamal focused on the practical implications, his mind already formulating ways to honor both his mother's independent spirit and their newly discovered family connections. Together, they made decisions that would shape their future relationship. The Community Arts Center, already under construction, would be renamed the Sarah Martinez Center for Creative Community, emphasizing her values rather than family connections. Nathaniel's financial support would continue, but through a foundation governed by a board that included community members and the twins themselves. Elijah's music found new depth as he incorporated elements of his expanded family history into his compositions. His latest piece, performed at the center's opening, wove together classical influences reflecting the Wheeler heritage with the vibrant community rhythms that had shaped his upbringing. The performance symbolically united both worlds while maintaining its own unique identity. Jamal chose to pursue his engineering studies with renewed purpose, accepting Nathaniel's support but insisting on maintaining his mother's apartment as his home. His senior thesis project combined technical innovation with community impact, designing sustainable energy solutions for underserved neighborhoods, a perfect blend of Wheeler resources and Martinez values. Nathaniel underwent perhaps the most profound transformation. His involvement in the twins' lives shifted from benefactor to family member, learning to share rather than direct, to listen rather than manage. The lonely halls of his penthouse gradually filled with signs of family life: Elijah's guitar, Jamal's technical drawings, shared meals, and honest conversations. The story's conclusion found them working together on the community center's opening day. As visitors explored the galleries featuring Sarah's work alongside new community artists, the three men stood before her self-portrait, the one that had so affected Nathaniel during his initial investigation. In her painted eyes, they now saw not just the artist who had touched so many lives, but the woman who had chosen love and authenticity over privilege, whose choices had ultimately led to a different kind of family reunion. This ending witnessed not just the healing of old wounds, but the birth of something new, a family defined not by wealth or status, but by shared values, mutual respect, and the enduring legacy of a woman who had dared to chart her own course. The Wheeler name and resources, combined with the Martinez spirit of community and creativity, created a foundation for future generations to build upon.